All right. Welcome, Artistpreneurs. I am here with DanRam, a global event MC and speaker at over 100 events a year. He's hosted changemakers like President Barack Obama, maybe you've heard of him, billionaire founders Sir Richard Branson and Reid Hoffman, F1 champion Nico Rosberg, Grammy-winning artists, celebrities, you name it. He works on 4 continents, from college campuses to parliaments to in-house corporate innovation days for Fortune 500 companies to the biggest tech conferences in the entire world. His passion is to inspire people with his motto, start now, start simple. I love that. In building a future that we all, want to live in. So just want to welcome you, DanRam. Thank you so much for coming and talking with us. Appreciate
Evan,
you.
thank you, man. And I will say this at the end of the podcast, and we'll say at the beginning as well. Thank you for doing what you do. I think we learn best when we learn from each other, especially for those who are entrepreneurs, artistpreneurs, freelancers. There is no book for what we do. So the best thing we can do is pay attention to podcasts like this and learn from each other.
For sure. I appreciate you saying that. Well, cool, man. Let's just get right into it. I would usually like to start with this. For those that don't know you, what's the Reader's Digest version of your story? Like how you reached your current level of success?
I would say it's been a journey of discovery. I mean, a lot of artists that are paying attention to this. So let's put it this way. Growing up, I was trained in classical piano playing. I learned to imitate, I learned to emulate, I learned to honor the original. But at some point when I turned 14, I started getting into jazz. And jazz is all about improvisation and creativity and thinking outside the box. And that shift in my musical journey was also my shift in my personal journey, because that's when I started coloring outside the lines and essentially finding my own path. I'm glad I had the support system to do that. And I'm glad I had the opportunities to do that, because that journey was vast. The Reader's Digest version is I worked for the UN, I worked for KPMG, I'm Ivy League educated, I played competitive sports, I worked in startups, I worked as an advisor to the Prime Minister of Ireland, I wrote national reports, I wrote personal startup journeys. Like, I've done a lot, but that's just all about discovery and self-awareness. And the greatest gift that life has given me is the space and the time to do that. Because the more I discovered me, the more I discover what I'm uniquely gifted to do on this planet. And that is currently as an event MC and speaker. This is my Ikigai. Are you familiar with the Ikigai concept?
No, I'm not.
It's a Japanese concept of like finding your purpose, your passion. Everyone's like, oh, follow your passion, follow your purpose. But the question is how? Like, how do you do that? And essentially what it does is it takes things like mission and vision and occupation and profession and puts it all together. And essentially it says, if it's something that you're good at, if it's something the world needs, if it's something that you can get paid to do, and if it's something you love, if the answer is yes to all those four, you have discovered it. Most people might find something they love, but they can't find a way to get paid to do it. Or it's something the world needs, but they're unable to be good at it. And if you can do all four, you've landed. And I'm very glad that as an event MC, I'm smack in the center of that Ikigai.
I love that. Yeah, I think that probably resonates with a lot of our community, because a lot of these artists, these creative types, they're trying a bunch of things and they're trying to get something to stick, and they love a bunch of different things, so they end up just filling a bunch of cups a little bit. So can you talk about like how you found that through maybe doing all these things and discovering that you didn't like other things or you weren't good at certain things? Like what was that process like of discovering this?
I'm going to take you to 10 years ago in 2014. I remember carrying 7 business cards in my pocket. Why 7? Because I was doing 7 drastically different things in this journey of finding out who I was. I was a lecturer in the university teaching entrepreneurship. I was a radio presenter with my own Monday night evening talk show. I was a consultant of multiculturalism and remote teams. And I had 2 startups, not one, 2 startups I was building simultaneously. And I can't remember the other 2, but I was doing 7 things at the same time. And you know what? There was a part of me that truly was in each of those things. But it also was a case of trying to figure out which one do I excel at. And essentially, it's a journey of introspection, Evan. I'm really glad my parents taught me this when I was young, but you ask yourself basic questions. You ask questions like, am I thriving in this environment, or is it draining me? Do I like the people in this industry, Or is this not my network? Is this not the group of people that inspire me? Is this a place I can grow? Or is it a place I'm stagnant? I think you pay attention to things like what makes it a good place versus a bad place. Maybe the average age of people around you. Maybe are you on your feet or are you behind a desk? And it's that answer is different for everybody, but the questions can be similar. And so you ask these questions, and in that process, I discovered the things that I was better at and worse at, and more importantly, why. Because that why is way more valuable. It's easy to go, okay, as a consultant, I wasn't thriving, but why? Well, I just realized I was working in these big companies where change is slow. So even though I might have wrongly thought that I'm communicating the wrong thing as a consultant, but that's not the case. It's just that when I desire to see change, I desire to see it now. So I still work as a consultant today, but rather to startups, because when you work at startups, the change is immediate. It's a matter of hours, days, or weeks. When you work with big companies, it's a matter of quarters or years before you see change. And that's all it was. So I would say trying new things and introspection, asking yourself tough questions, is how you discover what it is that you're good at. In the process, you might be doing multiple things simultaneously. You may go crazy during that time, but if you ask yourself the right questions, you're going to learn through that process.
Yeah, I loved the piece about looking at the environment. And I think that's a piece that's really missed. I felt that I started in the music industry and was like, I want to manage artists. I do not want to do that anymore for a very similar reason. I looked around, I was just like, no shade to the musicians, but a lot of artists and musicians are filled with ego. And I felt like that wasn't an environment I really wanted to be a part of anymore. I found myself more towards entrepreneurs who wanted to see change. And I think it took that introspection and been like, I think it's the environment that is. It's not like the work itself, because I love music. It's more of the people around me and like what that was. Not that all artists are like that, don't get me wrong, but in that time in my life, like it took looking around and saying, what is missing here? So I really love that piece of that. So a big roadblock for our community of artistpreneurs, creative entrepreneurs, is managing a busy schedule, right? With you being a coach, a speaker, a trainer, an MC, along with, I'm assuming, you having some kind of a personal life, I would hope. What are some daily habits that have contributed to your success that allows you to like focus in on each of those?
Bro, this is my favorite question. I love this question. So good, because the answer to this question is applicable to every single person. Doesn't matter who you are, start of the journey, end of your journey, successful or not, aspiring, doesn't matter. This is it. And I'll tell you the moment that this clicked in my life. I was interviewing Jay. Jay is Beyonce's manager. Jay is the head of Rock Nation, not Jay-Z. Jay-Z and Jay are business partners in Rock Nation. And if you're familiar with Rock Nation, they manage multiple artists, multiple athletes, multiple businesses, multiple real estate. I mean, they are a significant conglomerate. And so backstage, he already knows my obsession with Beyonce. And we had Beyonce soundtrack playing as we're going to go up on stage. And so very cheekily, I asked Jay, I said, Jay, who's your most valuable asset? And he didn't miss a beat, Evan. He looked at me dead in the eye and he said, Dan, businesses come and go. Opportunities come and go. Joy comes and goes. People come and go. Love comes and goes. But the only thing that goes and never comes back is time. Time is my most valuable asset. I'm telling you, Evan, that very same evening, I became best friends with Google Calendar. So here is tip number one, is manage and be intentional about your time, because it's your most valuable asset. What you put time to is your priority. If you have a vision of a six-pack, but you do not put in your calendar gym time, it won't happen. If you have a vision to build a band, but you do not make effort to go to concerts, to take classes, to meet people, to network, it just won't happen. Every dream, every vision, everything on that board needs to go on your calendar, and you need to dedicate time to it. So that's one thing I am religious about, is managing my time, putting on the calendar things I care about. I do not have a to-do list. I just have a time list. What I do at what time. That's it. To-dos to me are visionary. If you're an incredibly remarkable person, maybe you have time for your to-do list, but I never have time for the things on my to-do list. I only have time for the things I give time to. And so that's tip number one. Number two, I'm religious about my morning routine because in all my interviews with presidents and athletes, I have noticed this pattern that they make time to invest in themselves. Those who are at the top, and often artists as well, part of what drives us is our desire to serve, our desire to give, our desire to bless others. But you cannot do that from a place of emptiness. You have to be overflowing. And I've noticed that a lot of them do morning routines, some of them do evenings, some find other moments in their day if they're family people. But for me, it's been the morning time. And I've realized that if I've cultivated a healthy rhythm in the morning, that has positive ramifications for the rest of the day. And if I have an unhealthy start to the day, that has an impact on the rest of the day. So I have this thing called the 5G morning routine. These are the 5 things that fuel me. And my 5G morning routine, which you're welcome to steal or try, is the following: God, gym, goals, growth, gratitude. And make time for the spiritual. That's my God time. I pray, I read my Bible. You can meditate, you can breathe, you can do whatever you want, but realize there's a world bigger than you, and find yourself in that macro situation around you. Gym is the physical, and that's obvious. There's lots of science. I'm not a scientist, but there's a lot of science that when you go work out, when you do whatever it is in the morning that increases your heart rate, it actually reorganizes your internal hormones and your internal setup. So all those stress and anxiety hormones reduce, all the pleasure and happiness ones increase just by working out. So do that for yourself. The rest, I think, is pretty obvious. God, gym, growth, usually a TEDx talk, a podcast, or something of a sort. But I like to be inspired in the morning. Goals, this is my calendar and setting for the day what I want to do. And finally is gratitude. And this is just about having a mental check-in with yourself. I do not believe that emotions are accidental. And one of the greatest tricks in my life was learning that I could influence my emotions. Some people wait for a good thing to feel happy, but feeling good is a choice. And so I choose in the morning my attitude, my mindset for the day. And a big one is gratitude. I have noticed that when I wake up and I appreciate what is around me, I appreciate the people, I appreciate life, I appreciate the meetings, I appreciate this podcast here. It brings a different kind of energy, a different kind of mindset to the work that I do. So that was a rather long-winded answer, but hopefully in there is something that someone can take and apply in their life.